Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill late Tuesday night, and really the third commitment in the last 24 hours for this USC program. There's just not a program that has more momentum behind them than USC on the recruiting trail. Four-star offensive lineman Esun Tafa from the state of Utah at Corner Canyon committing to USC. This is one of those massive out west battles that if USC wants to get really to where they belong as a program, specifically in the Big Ten, these are the recruiting battles that you have to win. And USC gets it done. One, shout out Zach Hanson. USC has a couple of these young guys on staff. Zach Hanson obviously getting promoted from the tight ends coach to the offensive line coach job. I'm a massive fan of how the offensive line board is shaking out for USC, and we'll talk about a few more targets later on. If I were to sell the USC fans in 30 seconds on Ean Tafa, this is a physically imposing interior offensive lineman that, Dill, when you turn on the film, is really light on his feet. And we know USC, when they want to run the football, which we hope they do more in the 2025 year, they want to pull their guards and tackles play side. If you want to start for USC on the offensive line, you got to be an athlete. You got to be able to pull play side. You got to be able to climb to the second level. Ean Tafa, although extremely imposing, with 80-inch arms, or not 80-inch wingspan, not arms, 80-inch wingspan, this kid's a phenomenal athlete, specifically in the run game as well. Dill, want to have two different conversations. One, let's talk a little bit more about Ean Tafa, and then I want to get into just where this program is going with just a clear shift in terms of this, how this team is operating on the recruiting trail. Before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, number one, just cannot thank you guys enough. As somebody who loves to talk about the recruiting trail, it's been an absolute blast for the boys talking this program, and the amount of support that the USC fans have shown the fellas really over the last couple of weeks and months. It means the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And like a lot of y'all are saying in the comment section, buckle up, because USC ain't done in this 2026 class. Dill, I will give you the T-box. Let's start with Ean Tafa, and then let's kind of talk about where this program is going, not only on the recruiting trail, but really where they could be going over the next couple of years under Lincoln Riley.
And obviously with Esun Tafa, you got a guy who was playing left tackle for Corners Canyon, I should say, last year. But certainly you kind of watch him play. He probably does project better into that yard spot.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a guy who looks super comfortable going backwards, but you kind of said it. Like, Lincoln Riley does feel like he's kind of taking stock of himself as a coach, not just USC, because we've seen USC have good physical teams. Like, back when the Pete Carroll days were really humming, like, yeah, you think back, guys like Khalil and those offensive linemen, like, they were great there. I think Lincoln Riley's kind of taking a little stock in his own, like, personal mentality and how he's built teams. And, like, you look, they've been more physical along the lines of scrimmage, especially on the offensive line. They've had some issues in pass protection for sure with some younger guys. But you look at the way like Page plays, Alani Noah plays, Pregnon was playing, like, they were playing good physical football along the line, or offensive line, I should say. And I do think, like, you're starting to see Lincoln Riley embrace that a little bit more and wanting to build those lines and kind of lead from those units.
And so two things I want to say. One, talking about Lincoln Riley, Dill, I've been very critical of Lincoln Riley over the past 12 months in terms of how they've operated on the recruiting trail going back to last spring. The USC fans certainly know that. What I give Lincoln Riley the most credit for, and this is something that a lot of coaches really struggle with, and I give Lincoln a ton of credit for, is, look, Lincoln Riley's had a ton of success as a head football coach. You know, going back to his time in Norman, Oklahoma, things were not going right for USC over the last 2 years. It was very clear from a personnel standpoint, from an on-the-field standpoint. Lincoln Riley stepped back and said, hey, I got to evaluate how I'm running this program. And he made significant changes, obviously making some massive coaching hires. But I think the most significant change has been in the front office, and saying, I'm going to relinquish some of my responsibility in terms of what we're doing on the recruiting trail, what we're doing from a talent acquisition standpoint, and I'm going to go hire what I think is the best in the game here, and Chad Bowden. Not a lot of coaches do that. You know, Jimbo Fish is probably the picture perfect example of a guy that had a ton of success, didn't want to change, and now is out of a job. Yeah, Lincoln Riley struggled, especially moving from Oklahoma to USC, and those struggles kind of got masked because Caleb Williams was so good. I give Lincoln Riley a ton of credit for taking a step back after a very disappointing 2024 year and say, what do we need to do better to get this program where it needs to go? Dill, the second thing, and as Big Ten guys for our whole life, so we kind of appreciate this. You want to win in this conference, you have to have not adequate line of scrimmage play. You have to have elite line of scrimmage play. How do you have elite line of scrimmage play in this modern era of college football? It's not through the transfer portal. You can go grab wide receivers in the transfer portal. Heck, you can go grab quarterback or running back in the transfer portal. What you can't do, you can't build a good line of scrimmage through the transfer portal. Know who knows this is Chad Bowden, because you go back to how he fundamentally built that Notre Dame roster that just competed for a national championship. Go down and check the recruits that Notre Dame was bringing in. Majority of line of scrimmage players. Chad Bowden is going to be trying to do that for USC as well. And that's another thing that kind of fires me up, because as long as Lincoln Riley's running this program, pretty damn confident in quarterback play, pretty damn confident in wide receiver play. Where this program takes that step is starting to look like Michigan and Ohio State along the line of scrimmage. That is clearly being reflected in terms of how USC is going about their business on the recruiting trail.
And again, you kind of see, like, I even think if you go back to the Oklahoma days, like, there was something missing. That wasn't a team that you ever really felt
that's
like
very fair.
beat in Alabama or beat a Georgia.
Yeah.
Like, yes, Baker Mayfield got him close and he could score a ton of points, but you still felt like man to man, body to body, Georgia was the better team in that game.
Why were they the better team, though? Where were they the better
They
team?
were much better along both sides of the line of scrimmage. And again, you look, you kind of could tell there wasn't that pipeline of high school talent for the first couple of years of Lincoln Riley. And he started to get that in the offensive line, especially like Page, Noah. Those are guys.
Bill, sorry to cut you off, but even this year, like the depth along the line of scrimmage is not good enough going into 2025. Now, and we kind of talked about this a lot where, look, do I expect USC to be a good team in 2025? Yes. I don't think people realize how close USC was being a good team in 2024. Out of their 6 losses, they had leads in the fourth quarter in 5 of them. All 6 losses were one-score losses. This USC team was not as bad as many people thought in the 2024 year. But you even look at this roster heading into 2025 and say, do you comfortably have 10 guys that you think could play on the offensive line? The answer is probably no. Well, how do you get that going into the next couple of years? You got to get it going here. But I think, sorry to cut you off and go on a tangent, but I think you made a really good point, even going back to his days at Oklahoma, where because you had really good quarterback play, you were one of the best teams in the country. Why you kept banging your head on the ceiling there was because you did not look like a team like Alabama or Georgia along the line of scrimmage. And it's clear that USC is trying to look like that going forward under Lincoln Riley.
You said it just can't be done in the portal. Now, I think the next step will be getting that defensive line pipeline a little better, and they've been able to kind of do it a little bit, I'd say, in the portal. But again, you notice like that issue of like, oh, this team is not deep enough. They're not top end good enough. Like, it's hard to build it out. There's just not that many available guys who are particularly attractive in the transfer portal on either side. But again, like I like where USC is at, probably more so on the offensive line. I think you look at that pipeline, you look at who they have as young guys. I do think they're kind of coming along. Again, it's definitely not deep enough. It hasn't. The retention's not been ideal probably either on that offensive side. But I do think they're coming. The defensive line will probably be the one I'm looking at, because that to me feels far behind where it should be.
Well, see, but you started to see a little bit of that shift to close out 2025. Like, who do they prioritize? Jakeem Stewart. They bring in Floyd Boucard, who I absolutely loved. You have guys like G-Day and Carlin Jones. I get what you're saying, and I think what we're both trying to get at here is you are seeing Lincoln Riley make the changes, because you look at the prospects that they are really going after and pushing their chips in. Guys like Tom from Mater Dei, it's line of scrimmage players, because they know that's what it's going to take to get over the top and really have this USC team back where it belongs. And Dill, this is probably what excites me the most. Just sitting here, what do we got? March 11th, 8:30 at night, East Coast time. What excites me the most is that we grew up. Like, our first real memories of college football is when USC was one of the premier brands in the country.
Yeah,
And
USC
so
Texas. That's probably like the rivalry or not
the
rival.
game,
They were the guy. They were the teams.
and so what I'm saying is you see some other programs get some momentum, right? When USC has momentum, and if they can maximize this momentum, it's not they're going to be a fun team to watch. It's they can be a legitimate national championship contender every single year for the next decade if they do this thing right. And that's what excites me the most is the first 3 years for Lincoln Riley. It felt like he just was lost. The structure of the program was clearly out of whack, right? Talent acquisition, roster management was bonkers. They've made these changes over the last 2 months. And is it immediately going to be a national championship in 2025? No, at least the way I
But
look at
it
it.
is crazy how immediate the results have been off the field. I will say that. Like again, like you certainly got to finish the class out and see where it goes.
Yep.
But even you look like them prioritizing California, like that wasn't the case even a year ago. So it's like
Yeah.
you do feel like some things are a little bit different. You feel like the energy, you feel like the way Lincoln Riley's talking, like it's not as almost complacent sounding as it sounded. You got a guy like Chad Bowden,
Chad
who is
Bowden, man.
super aggressive
Dude.
in all facets of football, it seems like. So you look at I agree. Like frankly, I wouldn't have thought Chad Bowden would come in and like turn things around this quickly,
Yeah.
but you do feel like the energy is a little bit different. I'm kind of with you. Like 2025, to me, it'll be what it is. Like I do think like
Well, the thing is, Dill, is I think every USC fan knows that you got to win games in 2025 because you want to keep this momentum going. But if you're a USC fan saying, come 2026, this is a team that is going to be, if they continue to operate.
Yeah, you want to win games, of course, but even just the fact that they have guys who I feel like want to be USC guys a little bit more than even
I agree
last
with that.
year.
Very
Like,
good point.
yeah, it is the local
Oh, yeah.
guys. It is trying to build a pipeline of guys who want to bring USC back a little bit more than last year, where nobody from California was committing to USC. Like, what did they not land one of the top 10 kids until Husan Longstreet flipped really late in the process? Like, to me, like that's fundamentally like it's not as reliant on just quick spurts of like Hollywood momentum that it did feel like they were a little bit reliant on before. Like if you build it up through owning your backyard, I do think that's a little bit more sustainable and isn't as reliant on on-field results. And again, I'm not saying you want to go see a 5-win year. That would be very disappointing. But I do think what they're doing on the trail is more sustainable than what it was last year, where it did feel like a little bit more punchy and a little bit like
flash in the pan.
Yeah,
is probably the best way to
it's
say
more
it.
sustainable to build from California, especially when California has a really good class of kids this year.
Oh, dude, the state of California in 2020, like USC picked the right year to get it right in California because it is so talented. And Chad Bowden said it's the most talented class of California kids in 2 decades. And he said, we're going to sign the biggest class that USC has seen. And I mean, it's Dill, you notice that like when USC hired Chad Bowden, I immediately hopped on because I really do think having a good general manager and having alignment from the athletic director to general manager to head coach is huge. And you're seeing a lot of programs that you might have a good head coach, but you're not lined up with the general manager and AD. The alignments here, and Dill, I had high expectations for Chad Bowden and what he could do. He surpassed my expectations in a meaningful way over the first 6 weeks he's been a USC Trojan.
He's coming storming for sure. So
and it's only gonna get better. It's gonna be really fun. We'll continue to break down the commitments. We didn't do as much film with it. We didn't do any film for a guy like Ean Tafa. Really good football player that's really polished. And Dill, I guess we probably should have started with this, but what I would say is you feel good that he's going to be a multi-year starter for USC on the offensive line. Going to be fun. Buckle up, as the USC fans have been saying in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.